Hello and welcome to The Appointment. I'm Pranjal Sharma. Joining me today is Sanjay Kapoor, who's the chairman of MicroMax. Sanjay, thanks for being on The Appointment with me.
My pleasure.
It's been a fantastic journey for MicroMax, and I think it's very exciting to have you on MicroMax. What brought you to the company? I'd like to begin with that.
I think the last 15 years in trying to help build a brand like Airtel has been a very invigorating experience before this. And I think the last 5-6 years has been in the world of data because the telecom companies were transforming from voice to data. And I think that became a very invigorating aspiration going forward. When you look at the whole data world, I would simplistically divide it into 5 verticals and say it's about access, it's about devices, it's about applications and content, it's about storage, and it is about analytics. When you look at India as a country, you clearly saw that the devices part and applications part was clearly zooming faster than the content, storage, and analytics. Mm-hmm. And these are the areas where homegrown companies were coming in and really giving run for money to globally established companies. And therefore, I saw an opportunity with a company that was homegrown. Just about 4-5 years back it started, and what a wondrous story has been created by the so-called promoters of this company, putting together $1 billion entity.
Absolutely. MicroMax as a brand has now, taken over the public consciousness as consumers. It is number 2 after Samsung. But it's been an incredibly rapid growth for a company, and it has sort of transcended several barriers of brand recognition. Sanjay, now that you are the chairman, and I'm sure there is a growth path that you're taking, what would you like the company to take the next steps as?
So let me start off by saying that in the first phase of success of this company and brand, it has been all about entrepreneurship, and it has been about innovation. The company has been very quick to pick up customer insights and convert them into products that are both great in terms of delivery and in value. And I think they have surprised the market by the sort of innovation that they've been able to bring about on their products over the last 4-5 years. I think that has been the first phase of growth.
But just to interrupt you here, on this point, what did it get right? I mean, how did it understand the customers or getting the product right, which others in global giants could not?
So 2 things. Very clearly, the promoters understood that in this world, to understand the consumer and take a call on consumer insights is very important. So they could take faster calls than anybody else could. So just to give you an example, they could identify with a dual SIM requirement in a multi-SIM market before anybody else could do, right? And that surprised the market. They could identify the fact that this country doesn't have power, and therefore you need a phone where the battery can be stored for a month. And they surprised the market with how they moved. Similarly, they figured out women as a segment and came out with Blink series of phones, which were very typified for women. So these are the sort of innovations they could come out with and take quick calls, entrepreneurial calls, simply because they could take quick decisions, and they believed that one size fits all does not work on a global phenomenon now with the devices across the globe. So I think they surprised everybody with these moves. And in the second phase, obviously it's a transformation phase, which is MicroMax 2.0. And in this phase, the endeavor with everybody who's participating in this journey is that we want to transform this company from being a devices company to being a devices and services company in this great world and transformational world of internet. And I think that's the big agenda that we are taking through. Let me quickly explain some of the things that are warranted and necessary that will go along with this transformation. First and foremost, we are transforming from feature phones to smartphones. This is being done through 2 means. One is through push, because the world over, the consumers are moving towards smart devices rather than feature phones. And on the other hand, the operators probably find more value in data and smartphones for the utilization of their network and the consumer experience as against feature phones. So I think there's both a push and a pull phenomena over there to make sure that the world moves from feature phones to smartphones eventually. And the growth of MicroMax is subjected to this movement as well. If you look at our market share on feature phones, it is much smaller than our market share on smartphones, which also basically tells us that the brand has passed the acid test of being acceptable to the consumers. So that's one
at every level.
At every level, absolutely.
From entry to the the premium level.
To the mid-belly.
Right.
Right. Of course, we do not compete in the phones costing $500 and above. But in the mid-belly, I think we are well accepted as a brand across the customer strata. The second transformation is that in the world that was devoid of internet, certain businesses were potent, but were probably not as viable when it came to share economics. Things like wearables, things like accessories, because if you have to distribute them through a physical distribution of 100,000 outlets, then at times you go unviable because you're managing 300, 400 SKUs. How do you make them profitable? But with the advent of internet, now you can have one storage facility and you can be omnipresent. You can provide the delivery any part of the country, any part of the world. So I think that's a fundamental change, and that's the second change that you will see with MicroMax, that we will start looking at these newer revenue streams as we grow. The third transformation is how to take this brand now that it is well accepted in some markets into a larger developing world, right? And we clearly see a journey towards that. Today we are present in, other than India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and lately in Russia. And all these countries we are doing exceedingly well.
So this is also now part of your new thrust of taking MicroMax global. Why is this so important for you to take MicroMax global, considering that there's still a lot of headroom and scope for expanding within the Indian market?
So I think it is not a or decision, it's an and decision here. Because India is going to remain the largest market that we are going to serve, and there's so much of ground to be covered because the smartphone penetration in this country is still just about early double digits, and there's a long way to go. But this doesn't mean that this model and the experience that we've provided to customers can't be replicated in open markets in developing parts of the world. So I think we'll be very keenly looking at those markets as well as we progress.
Right, Sanjay, I'm going to take a break here, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Sanjay about how does a company like MicroMax hope to thrive well? What kind of changes does he seek from the regulatory environment in the country to make sure that MicroMax thrives, but also if there can be a possibility of creating many more such entrepreneurs in the country. Stay with us.
चंद लकीरों की समझ से आप बाजार की चाल समझ सकते हैं।
You're watching The Appointment with me, Pranjal Sharma. Sanjay Kapoor, chairman of MicroMax, is with me. Sanjay, the company has grown rapidly. It's I think going to be in multi-billion dollars of revenues. Where are we going to stand at the end of this fiscal year?
So I can't give you any forward-looking statement as a company policy. All I can say is that we've been growing faster than the market, and I hope to continue delivering on those benchmarks that we've set.
But you have a target of maybe reaching 2 billion or 3 billion. Is there a target?
So I can't disclose that.
Right. But that's Sanjay being very modest. But Sanjay, one of the things which is important is that companies need to raise funds as you grow ahead. Do you have a plan of listing in India?
So I would say that we are a well-funded company. We are profitable. And there's no burning need to raise capital tomorrow or day after. But if the question is IPO one of the strategic options for us going ahead, I would say yes, that's an option that we will positively consider. I don't have a mandate right now to say that yes, we are going in for an IPO, but that's an alternative that we will always have up our sleeve.
Absolutely, that's a strategic decision to take, so it's not being ruled out. But one of the thoughts which has been coming up in the country recently is the model for the device and the hardware for telecom sector, mostly devices. Manufacturing in India, how important is that? Right now, you manufacture in other locations and then you sell it over here. How do you structure this?
So, China today probably is accounting for virtually all of world's produce of smart devices, or a very large part of world's produce. And it is very unfortunate that everything is just concentrating in one part of the world. I think the world needs a de-risking strategy. And the moment you look at a de-risk strategy, then what better place than India? I think that's where the Make in India philosophy really works, because India, given its local demand, really can be an alternative to China. And I think we must work on that agenda, which the Prime Minister himself has been promoting very actively.
But when you get your phones manufactured, what is your value add? Do you just pick up the phones from manufacturers in China and then ship them here, or what is that you bring to the table?
So there are two types of developments that happen. One is on phones where we have ODMs to design and manufacture the products for us. And there are others where we are accountable for the design element by and large. I think both types of activities happen. But I think the most important thing in developing a phone is to understand the consumer insights and to convert that into a design that we think will be acceptable to the market and consumers going forward. I think that is the biggest value added activity. However, the assembly of the phones, and because the ecosystem sits in places like China and Taiwan, does a lot of assembly happen there. Tomorrow, as India becomes a destination, for example, as an alternative, you will see that there will be a migration of that ecosystem into this part of the world.
So, you're also a leader, you understand the telecom industry so well, Sanjay, so many years you've been in the sector. What would it take for these large manufacturers to set up base in India? What is stopping them today?
I think nothing's stopping them. Many of them would already be considering. And I think there are always two ways, the stick and the carrot. I'm always a believer of the carrot. And I believe as some carrot is thrown and they see an economic inclination towards moving their base, they'll be first to grab that opportunity.
What should be what can be the government's role, either at the state level or the central level, to enable this change?
I'm sure government can have policies, clearances, and incentives for these manufacturers to start moving base to India sooner than later, including some financial incentives that some of those government has already talked about and announced. I think as these gain momentum, there will be a migration. But keep in mind that to move the whole ecosystem is not something that can happen just overnight.
There are several issues on the spectrum side for the telecom services industry. Are you impacted by that as a device company?
Yes, I started off this dialogue with you by saying there are 5 ingredients to creation of data. And this will also impact our broadband nation endeavor. And access happens to be one of the most critical factors. As the access in a country becomes better, you will see the consumption of data, m-commerce, full utilization of devices, content, applications, storage, everything going up. So actually, access is a very, very important ingredient. And the unfortunate part in our country is that not even the largest operator in this country has a pan-India footprint on 3G. Everybody is working on Mickey Mouse spectrum of 5 megs, on most technologies. 4G in some cases has 10 megs. But look at what is happening across the globe. With 100% penetration of fiber and fixed line, people are still scrounging for more spectrum. Even US is worried about the next 500 megs of spectrum and where will it come from. So, we have a very small spectrum that we are trying to put to use to create a digitized nation, which I'm sure is not going to be substantial enough for us to transform ourselves. So if India needs to be competitive globally going forward, I think this is one problem that needs to be licked. Otherwise, this broadband agenda is not going to be satiated.
Sanjay, we take a small pause over here. When we come back, I'll ask Sanjay Kapoor about his views of the new government, which is promising a lot of change for citizens and the industry alike. Stay with us. You're watching The Appointment with me, Pranjal Sharma. Sanjay Kapoor, chairman of MicroMax, is with me. Sanjay, a lot of excitement in the country with the new government and a new prime minister who has developed a reputation for being a go-getter. Of course, the expectations are running ahead of what's happening on the ground. What are the things that you would like to put on the agenda of the prime minister for making real change possible?
First and foremost, a big congratulations to him personally and to his cabinet for establishing such a global buzz about India. I think many of us are seeing such a large buzz after a very, very long time. I think India is really talk of the town no matter which part of the world you visit. And friends and family, every part of the world is very excited about what's happening in India. I can tell you from another perspective, when we go and look for talent as we build capability in our own organization, we have least amount of resistance as compared to ever. When people want to migrate to India or work with us or look at India as a destination to actually look forward to their aspirations. So I think that's all good news for us. However, like any CEO or somebody who's been running corporations and organizations for a long time, my expectation would also be that when do we start measuring the output and the results of all the inputs and the buzz that we've created. And I think whether it's 4 quarters from now or whether it's 6 quarters or 8 quarters, we need to have some benchmark, some deadline when we start measuring the output of the industry, the economic output of the nation to see how are we performing, is it culminating into reality and results as we go forward. I think that will be the real acid test as we move forward.
True, and one of the things which the government is focusing on is Digital India, which really rides on the products and services that you are at the core of that activity. For that Digital India to succeed, where it's not just economic empowerment, but it's social empowerment, it's ensuring that citizens get what's due to them. What needs to be done to ensure that the gap between reality and expectation is met?
So I think you've really pressed a very sensitive nerve. Going forward, the world is and the countries are going to compete not only on the physical infrastructure, but a mix of physical and virtual infrastructure. And that's where I think this whole thought about Digital India really comes to life. However, I think this is a pain point today. When you really see how much is happening on the ground, what are the sort of policies that need to change, have they changed or not, I think the situation is far from what would be acceptable.
So what would you like to change?
So I think first and foremost, I see a lot of good things being recommended by the regulator, but when it reaches the department and the policymakers, it doesn't get acceptance. So I think very clearly the regulator needs to be empowered a lot more, because this is the right path to pick up. And I think we are missing out the woods for the trees over here. The second thing is the government needs to make sure that this digital agenda is not delivered by government agencies alone. There is a private and public partnership that comes into place. And I think public needs to play a role, or the government needs to play a role on policy making, having single point windows, removing the pain, and actually the entire execution left to the private sector. It'll be much faster if it gets done that way. Otherwise, we have seen the plight of many projects in the past which never even saw the daylight. So I'm afraid if given the time that we have, if we quickly want to roll out and make Digital India a reality, then we need 2 or 3 things very urgently. We need a lot of fiber backhaul to make sure we are able to take care of so much of data that flows through. And the other is provide the right access which is through wireless in a country like ours, because wired will take time. However, both are equally important, and I think government needs to concentrate on both. But the policies today and availability of spectrum, the price of spectrum, is a short-term versus a long-term view. I think it is proven across the globe that with every increase in penetration of telecom and data, the GDP tends to gain substantially. If that is true, then we should not be worried about extracting money out of auctions for the short run and compromising the long run sustainability of a nation and competitiveness of a nation. I think this is clearly an agenda where somebody needs to bite the bullet.
Finally, Sanjay, in terms of engaging with the government, and you're a market leader, what are you willing to do, or what would you like to do to ensure that, you know, some of the hopes of taking India closer to, you know, a developed status work? What kind of engagement would you be working with the government now?
Well, I think first and foremost, the industry that we belong to and the sort of delivery that we have made as an organization to empower people of India on digitization and the empowerment that they've gone, because today you need a global mindset. The tools are available with you. You could be sitting in India and be doing a business in any other part of the world. This was not even possible a few years back. And I think we make that possible through devices that we provide to people which empower them to take a lot of these calls.
Yeah, I'm talking about, you know, you mentioned that a partnership between public and private partnership where, you know, the telecom industry and the government work together. So what would you like? What kind of partnership would you like?
So that's what I was leading to. I said at a public at large, we are doing whatever we are doing through our products. We'll be happy to participate in any government programs to ensure that the rollouts are expedited, and that if there is any role that we can play in execution, that we are able to do it. Also, we will always lend a constructive arm to policy making and inputs for policy making, so that we are moving to the right direction. I have a lot of learnings from my previous job where the whole environment was so punitive. You could be making a mistake for a few lakhs and paying a penalty of a few crores. You know, I don't believe that works. I think in today's world, the carrot approach will work much better. And we'll always give the right inputs to the policy makers to make sure the environment is conducive for everybody to come, experiment, and fail. If the need be, doesn't matter. But I think this great experimentation and innovation needs to really set into every part of this nation so that we can be a lot more productive nation going forward. And we as a company are absolutely committed to participating positively in any of these endeavors of the government.
And that bold, innovative approach is what defines MicroMax as well. Thank you very much for being with us, Sanjay.
Thank you.